This is Your Anxiety Toolkit, episode number 167. Welcome to Your Anxiety Toolkit. I'm your host, Kimberly Quinlan. This podcast is fueled by three main goals. The first goal is to provide you with some extra tools to help you manage your anxiety. Second goal, to inspire you. Anxiety doesn't get to decide how you live your life. And number three, and I leave the best for last, is to provide you with one big, fat virtual hug. Because experiencing anxiety ain't easy. If that sounds good to you, let's go. Well, welcome back. Oh my goodness, I get so geeked out about this stuff. So you guys know I love poetry. I really do. I wish I was a poet. I really need to try more at, mastering that art because it's an art that I admire and love so much. And one day I was scrolling through Instagram and I came across an Instagram account who was reciting poetry, and it was so exquisite. It explained what it's like to have mental illness, anxiety, and OCD to the T. And I immediately jumped on and DM'd and was like, please, can we have you on the podcast? This is totally up my alley. I just love when people can use words to perfectly describe what it's like to experience something, whether that be really joyful or really, really painful. I just love the way that poetry can wrap pain in beauty. I really love that. So I'm so excited to have with us today Georgia Locke. Georgia is an actor, a presenter, and a poet. She lives in London. She is such a rich old soul. I adored spending time with her. We actually got really into some really great topics about shame and guilt and loss and grief and anxiety. And it was so wonderful to spend time with her and hear, like I said, this wisdom and this beauty of these words that she used. And she recites several of my favorite poems that she has done. She's an award-winning poet, and you'll see why. So I'm so excited. I'm not going to spend any more time giving an intro because the really good stuff is in this episode. So I hope you enjoy it. This is a real lovely story about someone who really has done the work and knows what it's like and is working the recovery journey in such a beautiful way. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you guys are doing well. I love you guys so, so, so much. And just know that I'm thinking of you and sending you my love. Let's go to the show. Well, welcome. I am so excited to have what feels like an impromptu conversation with someone I'm so excited to speak with. So we have with us today Georgia Locke. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. And I'm so happy. I love, people who know me know that I love poetry. I love people who are very artistic and creative. It's sort of like, I wish I was. I wish I was a poet. I wish I was creative. So I have such envy of you.
Do you write any? You should write some.
Yeah, I actually made a deal with myself that I would a couple of years ago. And then I think what I've realized is a lot of my creativity goes into my work. And so I need to. You're right. I need to. So tell us about you.
Give it a try.
I will. Tell us about you and your journey, especially related to mental health and all of that good stuff.
Well, I'd always been very sort of anxious as a human generally, and had suffered with, feeling very sort of down at points. But then so I'm going to be 24 next week, but when I turned 22, that's when my OCD kind of really showed itself and made itself apparent in my being. I didn't know what was going on. And that's why I try and talk a lot about it on like my Instagram and things now, is just because I was really sort of came out of nowhere in a day. And then for a week, I was kind of in this weird spiral of not having a clue what was happening in my brain. Because I'd also heard like the misconceptions and the incorrect stereotypes about OCD. And so I just hadn't a clue. I would never have thought, oh, maybe that's what I'm dealing with here. So that was a really fun time. But I'm one of the lucky ones, because then I actually found out that it was, or I was luckily realized it was OCD only a sort of few months after that week. So there was a bit of a moment, but I was lucky really with that, because I know how long people can go undiagnosed for. The more that I learn about this disorder, the more sort of blessed I feel really that I found out relatively soon.
What was that week like for you, that first week?
Pretty tortuous, really. I remember it was so strange. It was kind of on the countdown to the new year. I was with my partner and his friends, and I don't know what happened. I'm friends with one of my ex-boyfriends, and I wished him a happy new year. And then suddenly something in my head just went, I can't even really describe it. It just felt like it broke in my head. And it was like, but how could you do that? And I was like, but that's a normal thing to do. And then I was like, I don't know. And I think I sort of made a jokey comment because he was with his new girlfriend, but it was very jokey and we're very amicable. And I make these kind of jokes with him all the time, my friend. But suddenly just something in my head was like, but that's really awful. And I went into one of these classic, kind of confession cycles to my partner. And I was just the whole evening like, but I just was so stuck in this thought. And then for the whole week, then I just felt like, have you ever seen The Matrix? I don't know if this is a weird way to describe it.
Lots of people explain it as The Matrix. You're not alone.
What I mean? And there's a bit, oh, well, I'm so glad that that's come up before. That makes me feel better. But it was also like, I don't know if I haven't seen it that many times, but there's a bit where they sort of scan for ships or something. But it felt like I had these scanning things in my body, but like looking for proof of wrongdoing. And this is still when I didn't know that it was OCD. And I was just kind of walking around and like I just feel my body just desperately trying to find reasons why I should feel so guilty about everything. And it was just this real, and I was just so stuck. And then I'd be revisiting conversations with people from like, the previous year, and I'd be sort of living in them and analyzing them and just making real sort of dynamite out of dust, really. And it was just very strange and I couldn't understand it. And I remember I was really just stuck in a sentence for about 4 days and I didn't have any breaks from it, and there's just that awful feeling, isn't it, of when your whole day is filled with a thought, and then you go to sleep and then your dreams are filled with a thought, and then you wake up and it's filled with a thought. And for a while, I was sort of, my poor boyfriend, I was just to kind of have some sort of relief in the morning. And this was not helpful. I realize now, I didn't have helpful techniques for a while. This is not something one should do. But I would ask him to like wake me up in the morning and maybe just like shout a random word, just like cabbage or just like, banana, just to have some kind of distraction. So the first thing I thought of wouldn't be this thought. I mean, of course, it didn't work at all. Didn't work remotely. Made it worse, of course. But I had to sort of figure it out for a while when I didn't know what was going on, because I just felt really lost. I just felt like I was drowning in my own brain and I didn't really understand what was going on. And I just didn't get it. I just really felt like my brain had broken. And then once after I knew it was OCD, I read lots of articles that actually had said the same sentence, which I thought was quite telling, because it does just feel like it breaks. I don't even know how to describe it. And I loved I love my own company, and I did anyway. And I'd like sort of going out to dinner by myself, and I used to really enjoy that and enjoy time by myself. But then suddenly I was so scared to be alone, and I was so frightened of, feeling of God, what I might do. And, gosh, 2 months ago, did I black out? I don't remember it. And I, did something terrible, and just the classics really. So right. The week was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a strange one.
And you talked about the feeling of guilt. You said you were sort of scanning for guilt. Can you tell me, that's something that I haven't talked about a lot, but I hear a lot of my patients and clients talk about that. Can you share how guilt played a role?
Oh, yeah. Guilt was really massive for me. It was sort of the thing that affected me most, really, because I was feeling so, like, I even get a bit, emotional talking about it, because I've never known like such a feeling of, it was so weird. The sort of level of guilt that I was feeling was, and I knew it was disproportionate. I knew that it didn't make sense, but I couldn't get rid of it. Everything I did I would worry that I was so terrible for, like even tiny things. I mean, I felt a lot of guilt specifically about my relationship, but I think that's because at the time when my OCD came, my relationship was very new, and it was the only I was very down generally at that point in my life, and it was the only thing that was really, for me, giving me a sort of real beacon of light. And I knew it, and I even, I was like, I feel like I'm really relying way too much on my happiness in this, because it was really beautiful time. We hadn't been together very long at all, but it was really, and everything else in my life, I've been acting since I was 13, 12, in like just different shows. And I was struggling with the fact that my career had kind of been perhaps arguably more successful when I was younger, and I just started a job in an office. I'd been there for about a month, and it sounds so silly, but there were no windows. And I was very flattered that I had a job there, but it was just, there was no windows. It was a complete change in my regime. Like, I hadn't ever had that kind of structure for a very long time, because when I wasn't acting, I was working kind of shift work, and I'd still have days and it was so, and I think I just didn't really I felt a bit like I was losing myself anyway. OCD kind of had a beautiful playing ground. Like, it was really all working out for it to just come over and say hi. And so I think that's why it attacked my relationship as well, because it was really the thing that I was, sort of relying on. But I think that's why I had a lot of guilt about that. But then it would feed into anything, I'd feel so guilty. Okay, this is another example. I realized that the therapist that actually I'd seen at the beginning, when I didn't know it was OCD, and in hindsight probably wasn't the best therapy for OCD, but I'm really lucky in that I only had 3 sessions with her, and she said to me, I think this sounds like OCD. And I'm realizing now how lucky I was with that, because that could really have gone a different way. But I sent her some flowers to say thank you yesterday, because it was a year ago I saw her now, I think. But I just suddenly, I've been realizing more and more that actually she really saved me a lot of suffering. So I sent her some flowers, but she hadn't received them, but they said they'd been delivered. And even I was feeling so guilty for these poor flowers that weren't in water, which I know sounds really silly, but I just feel like that's like a kind of cutesy example, I suppose. But I actually would still feel it. Like, I actually was really worried, and I was feeling really terrible that I'd like murdered these flowers. And even just little things, I think having my own opinions on stuff, I then feel really guilty for. Or like, if, we go and watch a film and then the film is bad, I feel like it's my fault. Like, just anything, talking to people. I didn't look at men in the eye for about 6 months. And most of my close friends are men. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't really speak to anybody for fear of, gosh, what if they think that I like them? What if I'm coming across, in a way that I don't want to? What if I'm just everything? I would just analyze all aspects of my behavior. Or like, if I took off a necklace that my mum had gave me, would it be mean to her? Like, just anything. It was kind of in everything I did.
Which makes sense, because OCD always attacks the things you value.
Yeah.
Like, we know that. And so the way you would describe it, like, you loved your partner, you really felt really close to that person, you wanted them. So of course OCD was going to attack that. And then even things like, you really appreciate your mom and the sentimentality of the necklace, or you really appreciate the flowers. So that guilt, of course, intrusively shows up.
Yeah, which is just so much fun.
Well, it's painful, isn't it? Because guilt is the emotion that says you've done something wrong. Yeah. So if that's coming up as like an error in your system, you're constantly fighting, like, am I wrong? Am I wrong? What did I do? That's really, really painful.
Yeah, it's so true. I hadn't really thought of it that way. You're right. Yeah, I mean, and when it was, the first 2 months were really terrible, and I didn't eat really. I lost so much weight. I was worryingly ill, because I just felt, and then when I would try and calm myself down, then my head would be like, but you don't deserve to be calm because you're so bad. And so at that time, if I was 5 minutes late to meet someone, I would just be distraught. I'd be crying. I'd be like, I'm so sorry. I'm so late. This is so unbelievably rude. How dare I, it was very much that. I think, as you say, it's the things you value, isn't it? And I don't want to feel like, I'm coming across as sort of selfish by valuing my time more, or, so it was a lot of that.
Yeah, really, really hard. Thank you for sharing that. I think I hear that a lot. I bet you people listening are probably having a lot of light bulb moments, because guilt plays such a huge role, and we don't talk about enough. We're always talking about anxiety and uncertainty, but not the guilt aspect.
It's true, actually. Yeah, I feel like that's because, I mean, for me anyway, that's why I sometimes get anxious talking about it, because then my OCD is like, well, maybe it's because you are just bad. The age
Right.
old.
Right, but
Yeah,
that's how OCD does it, right? Like that's true. It's like OCD will always try and hook you with this thing you
yeah.
can't argue with. Well, maybe it's not even OCD. You're just
Oh,
actually
no.
bad.
How many times have I Googled that in the past? Oh, God. It's just so rude. It's
It
just so
is.
rude.
Right,
You've got to
right.
laugh at it, really. Otherwise, it's just too awful.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. I probably told this before for listeners, but I don't know. I'll share it with you. Is I personally don't have OCD, but I
Yeah.
literally talk about OCD all day, every day. And I always think of OCD as this guy in a beach chair, and he's got sunglasses on and he's got his hands behind his back, and he's just like, how can I mess with this person today? Like, and it picks the easiest thing, right? Let's like, yeah, let's just throw some guilt at her. That'll be easy. You know what I mean? And then away you go, right?
That's such a good image. Oh, my God. With
Right.
really ridiculous flamingo beach shorts or
Right,
something. Or that
exactly.
you've got to dress
Exactly.
up.
He's just
Yeah.
chilling. He's like, how can I
Eyeglasses,
mess with
yeah.
you today? Let's do the easiest. Let's throw an easy one at her.
I want to call him. What can we call him? I'm going to think of a name. And then
I
I'm just
love
going
it.
to be like, Eugene. I just
Exactly. Did you say Eugene?
yeah, I did.
Yes, that's his name. I'm going to
That's
call
his
him
name, right?
Eugene. He's definitely a Eugene.
Right? Come
Yeah,
on. Come on,
yeah.
mate.
Actually, I'll ask you, unless you're an artist, I'll ask Sean Shinnock, who's an artist. I'll ask him to draw Eugene.
Oh, that would be so great, please.
Yeah. So let me
Oh,
segue, because I think that you have some artistry. Talking about artistry, would you mind sharing with us one or two of your poems,
I'd love
so we
to.
can kind of get a glimpse into how is the poetry being a way you process it, or the way you story tell it? Like how does poetry play a role?
I think it's a mixture. I think for me, it's a bit like it causes me so much pain, this disorder. So if I can try and make some kind of art with it, it's a bit like, haha, take the power back kind of thing. I don't know. Or at least it makes me feel a bit more in your face, Eugene. You know, I'm trying to make something here. Like, at least I'm trying to sort of make something artistic out of it. And I think as well is that I feel like I'm so keen for people to be more aware of this disorder, because I know how like terrified I was. And so I think people maybe will listen more. I don't know if that's maybe not true, but I just feel like if I'm putting it, because people don't follow me necessarily that did follow me originally to listen to OCD stuff, like, you know, perhaps they know me from a show or something. And so I don't want to, I just kind of want to basically, without sounding terrible, trick people into
Yeah.
listening to it.
Good.
You know,
Good.
I just, and also I find it a bit like a puzzle to try and make things fit. And I feel like, yeah, it did help me. It was quite, you know, sort of soothing to be able to write about it.
Right.
Helped me make
Right.
sense of it a bit myself, I think.
Right. Well, and I think that's why I love poetry, for that reason. Is I love to listen to a story being told as poetry. I think it allows me to step into it better than if you just had read me like a 500 word like example or telling me your story. The poetry for some reason sits and lands on me better, if that helps. Like that's, for me, definitely that's the
Lovely way of
case.
saying it, really, actually. Yeah, the
Yeah.
lands on you thing. That's nice. Yeah. I like to think so as well. It's just a bit more easier to digest, perhaps, than a 500 word essay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's see.
All right. Okay. Well, this is quite long, so I'm really sorry. Do I have time? It's not that long. I wrote this. This was the first poem I sort of wrote that I was about my OCD, so that's why I thought I'd share it. It was, you know, it's pretty early on, but I was being able to breathe a little better, which was helpful. I could feel like there was some light coming through. Each day there's a little more sunlight, and I swear more carbon dioxide is leaving my lungs these past 2 days than has this whole year. It's hard to explain, but when you're afraid of your mind, you'll find it's hard to breathe, not sometimes, but constantly. And hindsight shows no real surprises, though of course I'm emphasizing the moments in my memory where OCD is ruling me. So in fact this film's predictable, but still things here to learn. I guess it's all connected. The climax, a deformed firework of expected, but it still hurts. I don't think I'll ever fully be able to put into words how terrifying it is to be lost within your head. And the more you try to escape, the more lost you find you get. And suddenly you're such a jumbled mess of fear and fearing fear that your head starts to create thoughts that you know should not really be here. And it's like when a song gets stuck in your head, instead, except for a song, it's a scene of torment. And instead of just being a little annoying, it kind of feels deadly, like your thoughts are poison. And you know it's not real, but terror screams all the same. And demons make you question everything. Sorry, hold on, what's my name? And they'll tell you you're not deserving. And by far, that's been the worst thing. Convinced I found a soul I wish to wake to every morning, whom I love and who loves me. But the fear whispers daily of how the others they did leave, all the ones who came before. And how out of all of them, this one really deserves more. But my haven is so understanding, and by my side he stays. I tell him how I'm scared, but his words, they numb the pain, they soothe me and help to heal the stress. We're together through good times and bad, like they say in the movies. And don't I want to be an actress? He knows just what to say. But for anxiety, there is no piece of me that can have peace today. And the nicer he is reminds me of how I deserve less, and tells me to feel guilt for love, attacking my one solace. But as I say, the clouds are clearing now, and I don't want to jinx it for lack of a better word, but it's a scary revelation when you've been living in a world full of hate and reprobation and guilt for things you know you haven't done. And it's a weird concept to understand, but if you're one of those who do, anxiety's not one. You know deep down what makes you you. On the other side, you'll be so strong. That day will come, and perhaps you're going through this now, so later you can help someone. I promise that's the longest one.
I love it. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. I mean, listen to the words, like you're describing the first phase of treatment, I think, of like real, like learning what's happening, learning that you're actually not, it's not your fault, and learning that you don't deserve this. And oh, it's beautiful. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, it's funny. And then because I had been seeing, when this lovely therapist said, it sounds like you've got OCD, which, you know, such a simple sentence sort of saved me so much suffering. Then I was seeing someone for a bit for OCD, so CBT for that. And then a space became available on the NHS, and I hadn't done the sort of test thing before. You know, there's like I don't know how it works. I don't know if it's the same over there, and I just remember I was asked this question, you know, from 1 to 10, how often do you, or something, one of those things you have to rate. And it was just this one sentence that had taken up like 6 months of my life. And I just sort of burst into tears, because it was like, this is so strange, but also so comforting, because it's just here on a sheet, like, and other people have this. And it's not, because I think OCD is so good at making you think that it's just you for everything and everything you feel. So yeah, I think realizing, as you said, that it wasn't my fault was kind of a strange but great moment, really.
Yeah. And that you weren't alone, right? That you're, you know, I think you're right in that OCD has a way, and anxiety has a way of going, this is just you. This is all just you. And that's why I love having you on, and having people on who can sort of help us sort of dive in and be like, oh, it's not just me. That's the technique of Eugene, right?
Yeah.
Eugene has this ability to gaslight people, right, into thinking it's just them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah.
And what's mad about Eugene is that even though you know it's him, then when he starts picking on something else, a different area of your life, you're like, oh gosh, but is this Eugene? Yes, it's still him.
Yes.
So that's the thing. You have to like remind yourself every time that it's Eugene.
Right.
I'm a fan of it. Well, I mean, I'm not a fan, but I'm liking his name. It's sounding good.
Well, some people don't like to externalize their OCD. I find it really helpful to externalize anxiety, because it takes away, I can be mad at the problem, not mad at myself, right? And focus on the problem, not on this whole experience.
That makes sense to me as well. So why do some people not like to sort of separate it then? What's the thought there? Is it more anxiety provoking, or?
I don't know exactly, because I think everybody's different. But what I've seen is, I think there's a degree of a couple of things. So I think there's a self-stigma of, I don't want to think about there being a Eugene inside me, because then that means something bad lives inside me. And I often think of it as like, no, he's outside of you. It's just something that floats through your mind. And I think it's, again, how people conceptualize it. And I think another piece is, I think some people do then get stuck in, like you said, going, is this Eugene or is it not? Is it, instead of just going, this is all my thoughts are thoughts, and doing that way. So I think that every person sort of brings their own conceptualization. Yeah. I love to separate and externalize it, because then I can make sense of things.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. The conceptualization thing is that's the key word, isn't it? Because I immediately, when you said that, was thinking, oh yeah, I prefer to sort of think, well, it's, it's detached from me. But then at the same time, I can imagine that it, if you think about it in another way, it could be thinking, oh, but I don't want that sort of inside me kind of thing. That's so interesting, isn't it? So much of how you look at things. I thought, oh,
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
prefer to distance it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that guilt and shame can help influence whether you like to externalize or not, because some people have a lot of shame around having a Eugene,
Mm.
right? Like, I don't
Right.
want a Eugene. I don't want to have Eugene, right? That's a sort
Mm.
of a, I think we have many phases of acceptance when it comes to mental illness, right? Right.
Yes.
Accepting,
But yeah,
oh, I have this thing.
that I'm still not very good at that. I'm still, I feel, and it's so unhealthy to think about it that way, but I can't help, if I'm on a holiday or something with my partner, or just was particularly at, big events, I just think, gosh, I didn't always live this way. But that's just part of something that you have to kind of, as soon as you, that's why I said in my poem at the end, perhaps you're going through this to help someone. And I think someone said that to me once that sort of stuck with me about they, really struggle with depression. And I thought that's actually a really nice way of thinking about it. Perhaps, you do cross paths with someone that needs to hear what you've got to say, and, you can help them in that way. Because
Right.
otherwise you just think, oh, this is, I'm not going to beat around the bush. It is, tiring. Like I'm
Yeah.
always exhausted.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I agree with you. I think that we're in this wonderful stage, and I'm going to actually ask you to read some more poetry here just to sort of seal the deal here. But we're in this wonderful stage in the OCD community where
mm,
people are like, I've been in the OCD community for 14 years. People
mm,
are starting to talk about it all the
yeah,
time. Like there were no advocates that were speaking out. There were no poets
really,
speaking out. And just in the
yeah.
last few years, I feel like the advocacy in many areas creatively has just skyrocketed, which is like, that's it. This is good. This is
Yeah,
the work.
yeah. I think when I found sort of people online like yourself that were speaking about OCD, it was just, gosh, it was really helpful. I think in sort of helping heal in a way. Not that you can ever fully heal, but from this. But I think in terms of just feeling better in the days, it's just because as we said earlier, you do feel so, it can feel so alone. So I think that. Yeah, when you see people like that, and it can be so specific, because it can go on so many themes, and then Eugene speaks in the same way to everyone, but he speaks about different stuff, doesn't he? But then when you do see people and you think, God, I really thought, that was just me. And you just hear the way that it talks, and it's, yeah, it's very helpful to know that
Yeah,
you're not alone in that.
right. Absolutely. Okay. Share with us. Share with us
Okay,
some more.
this is the one I wrote about the OCD community, actually, because they just helped me so much. There we go. The comfort of community is something that is new to me, a space to share with no fear, the welcome that says, we understand you here, to know that you are not alone, that many tread this tiresome road, but not only tread, but march at speed, with armor and wisdom and insightful speech. We shout for our siblings who are still lost, for we know the damage not knowing costs. Diagnosis is key to a slither of peace. It's no miracle cure, but still, at least, you don't feel as scared or as mad and confused, because there are others who share your shoes. And though the thoughts and fear are loud, so are the voices that are so proud, so quick to encourage when you do well. No act too small, celebrate yourself. We support each other as a family would. We know how it feels to be misunderstood. Because I
Yeah.
just feel like there is, and I think it's hard, even now, I want to talk more on my page about, I love talking. Oh, sorry, my Siri just jumped in and said, I love talking.
Eugene created that.
And involved. Yeah, I do like to talk about, other things, but there still is, for people that don't understand OCD necessarily, you can understand, like, it is scary to talk about some things because it just doesn't make logical sense. And so I get scared, that there is going to be, when you share it, I do get nervous to post stuff, but then you just think, but I know that there's people that are going to resonate with this and it's going to be helpful. And so
Right.
the online OCD community is pretty amazing, really.
Right. And I think that brings up a really important point, which is, I think everybody who has even a small degree of understanding of OCD understands it doesn't make any sense. right? I think they're like, oh yeah, of course. Like it never makes sense. And I think that people are actually expecting it not to make sense when other people talk about it, right? And that's a part of the learning curve. I remember when I first started treating OCD and I was being trained, I would share with my husband, who has never met anyone with OCD, and he'd be like, but it doesn't make sense. Whereas now, very quickly, he was like, oh, it makes sense that it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's a part of it was really helpful for me to watch someone who knows nothing to all of a sudden be like, oh yeah, no, that's just what OCD does. Right.
That's so funny. It makes sense that it doesn't make sense, of course, because at first it's confusing, but it doesn't make sense. Why would this be a thing? But no, that's why. Yeah. That's why it's a thing, because it's not logical. And I think that's hard for people that, sometimes people that support you and that are close to you. It's very hard, I think, to be around someone you love with OCD when it's really bad and you don't know how to help, because people have tried to offer logical solutions. The amount of times that, a friend or a family member will be like, but why don't you just write a checklist when you leave the house and then just tick it off? Right. And it's like, thank you for this. But Eugene's in my head and he's had a few beers, so it's not going to make any sense. Like, so hard, because but then I feel bad because I get frustrated that they're suggesting these things, but then I feel really terrible for being frustrated because they're trying to help and they don't know that it doesn't make sense,
Right.
I think once people start to and I think another thing that doesn't help is, the incorrect stereotype of, but it's, enjoying order. So it does make sense. No. So frustrating.
It is really frustrating. Yeah, it really is. And that's the thing, right? Is you're a part of the education. You're a part of the change. That's what you're doing.
I hope so.
Yeah. I really believe that. I really do. Every now and then I stop when I have particularly these types of conversations. I stop and I get so excited about, like, all of a sudden within 3 years, there's probably 100 OCD advocates on Instagram only, right? Like, that wasn't there 3 years ago. How cool is that? And some people, you do poetry and some people draw and some people sing. And, it's very cool. It's very cool.
It's true. Think about how many in 3 more years.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah, I really do. I think that will be just... I always sort of compare, sorry, I'm going completely off track, but I myself had an eating disorder. So I used to be really involved in the eating disorder community, but then I'm trained in OCD and I really love this community. And I used to always compare and contrast and be like, the OCD, the eating disorder community, no one's afraid to share. Everyone's out there talking about it as if it's normal. There is stigma, but way less. And I can start to see the OCD community really catching up now, right? Like, it's really great to see that.
Yeah, how to be able to sort of compare as well. And you can think, but we know where this place is now and with this community and they're speaking more and just, that's lovely. That's really nice.
Yeah.
That's really
nice. So thank you. Do you have any other poetry you want to share?
I'll share one more, shall I? Because I was going to share another one that I don't know now. I'm stuck. This one is one I wrote when, can I share 2 more? Is that going to be annoying?
No, not at all.
Okay. Because then I can finish on a happy one. But this is one I wrote that sort of actually people from the OCD community were sharing on Instagram, which actually opened my eyes to how many people were out there, which was really nice. It's not that cheery. I apologize now, but I feel like there's solidarity in suffering.
Yes, definitely.
I don't want to live like this forever. I mourn for days without demons in my brain. I'd always felt pressure from the sun, but it was still kinder then. Depression and anxiety, yes, were dear close friends. In many days the world felt grey, but they were not like this beast to me, where worries are a new degree of fear. Not being able to articulate that I don't want to go near my little cousin because I am afraid that my brain will lie and tell me that I hurt her and forgot. So we play ballerinas, but I dance by the open door, a fake preemptive cure. So later, in case the poison drips into my head, I can ask my mother, but you saw me right the whole time. Oh, this reassurance, which is just fuel to this inferno that burns fast heat but has a lifespan of one that burns slow. I shouldn't ask for it. This isn't going to help me recover any quicker, but sometimes I just want to sleep. And I know that it's likely my dreams will continue this picture of hell, so I ask for reassurance for a minute of respite. But in reality, I'm pushing peace further away. It's scary to be scared of your brain when its lies are so convincing and yet your core knows them to be false, but the fear turns the thoughts sticky so you can't shake them off and they become impossible to bear. And somehow more impossible still, this monster of all nightmares has created a facade of being a cute quirk, but behind that mask its teeth are sharp. The world is dark and hope feels stark. We need to change the narrative on how OCD is seen, because you can't be helped if you don't know from what it is you're suffering. And the more it's misused and misreported, the less likely someone is to learn it's OCD that's leaving them exhausted. We need to change the narrative and how OCD is seen, because the more it's misreported and misused is killing people like me. Just, because I felt really, I do get very upset when I think about the people who just really think that they're terrible people, like this disorder can make you feel, and they have no idea that it's not them. And, I was in that space for a while, and I do worry about those people.
Yeah. I love how you share, when you feel stuck between a rock and a hard place of wanting reassurance, but knowing it's not helping. And I think that's such a bind that so many people find themselves in of, that respite that you talk about. It's the perfect explanation of that moment, right?
Yeah, because it's so hard when it's in a long run making something worse, but then you also think, I just need a break, but you know that that's not going to give you a break, and then you just go around in circles. Yeah. I have one more that's a bit happy, if that's okay.
I'd love to.
This is I wrote this when it had been a few months and I was feeling a bit more like myself, really. I'd had a day where I was anxious, but I was like, I kind of feel like I know a bit who I am.
All right.
Hey there, old friend. It's nice to feel you again here in this skin, settling home. I feel a change within my bones. A while now I'd felt hollow, and not from lack of love around, but from inside, empty I'd found. Yet still outside the world danced on, to my ears a silent song. And now you're back, the volume's raised, a comfort I've not felt in days. And oh, how nice to have you here, to feel you finally. Hey there, old friend. It's good to see you, me. That's just a little one.
It's lovely. It is.
Thank you so much. Thanks for letting me share them.
Oh, I do love them. You've got a book of poetry about OCD coming, I'm assuming.
Well, the thing is, what's funny is I actually wrote that book before I knew I had this disorder. So I added in one at the end, but it was strange because I won a competition to have the book published. Yeah, so that was the thing. And it was in the year that I had such a terrible year, because it was the year in 2019 when I realized that when my OCD sort of came up and showed itself, and when I had a really tough year. And then at the end of that year, one of my favorite poets he had started a publishing company before, and they were having a competition where, if you could send in some poems, and they'd publish a little book of your poetry. And so, and I was really lucky, and I won that. So the book came out a couple of weeks ago, but
wow. I didn't know that. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. But it was nice because it was a real kind of, there's a real bit of light at the end of that year. So that was really nice. But now, it's funny because I feel like there should be more things about OCD in it, but it's weird. And for a while, even what was really sad is my OCD was, I found it hard to look back on old poems I'd written because it would make me stress out about the meaning. And so it took a long time to sort of be able to enjoy doing those things again. But it did happen. So that's nice.
I love it. I didn't know that. That's so exciting. Congratulations. No, I think your poems have an ability to touch people, even if they have different theme from you or their experience is different, because that process and cycle is still the same. So I think it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Well, listen, thank you for coming on. I know people are going to want to know where to find you. So tell us about where we can get a hold of you.
If you want to say hi, my Instagram is @Georgia_Natalie. And it's Natalie with an H after the T, because why not?
Why not? I love it. And we will have links in the show notes, but also you can go to my Instagram and I'll have all of the links when we have this come out. So that is so exciting.
Lovely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so nice to speak to you properly.
Yeah, really wonderful. And thank you. Like I said to you, the poetry thing, I can just listen to. It soothes me. I think that's what it is. I just realized the poetry soothes me. Even if it's not easy to listen to, like I said, it lands and I can stay with the story really beautifully when there's poetry being read. So
Thank you so much. Well,
thank
thank
you.
you for letting me read some as well. I hope I didn't sort of just talk your ear off.
No, I could just listen to it all day long. Really, I
Awesome.
could. Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me talk about it and speak about my experience with
Yeah.
OCD.
Thank you for being so open.
Please note that this podcast or any other resources from cbtschool.com should not replace professional mental health care. If you feel you would benefit, please reach out to a provider in your area. Have a wonderful day and thank you for supporting cbtschool.com.